Hamza Soham, Hamza Soham Ekam. Hamza Soham, Hamza Soham, Hamza Soham Ekam. Hamza Soham, Hamza Soham, Hamza Soham Ekam. Hamza Soham, Hamza Soham, Hamza Soham
Life is not easy, I know it. It challenges us in countless difficult ways. And there are times when you fail yourselves, especially when you fail to rise to the challenge. You may have failed others, the people who trusted you or expected more than you could give at that point in time. It is hard and you judge yourself. You feel guilty. You dislike yourself. But forgiveness, especially forgiveness towards oneself, is an essential gateway to live a peaceful life. When you forgive, you actually bow to this immensity called life. Today, I invite you to travel with me on this path of forgiving oneself. Will you journey with me? Namaste. When I was young, the story of Shravana Kumara saddened me very deeply. But then later I thought of the immense torment that Dasharatha must have gone through because he had killed such a noble and young lad on whom his parents were dependent for their very survival. Dasharatha must have been a broken man with his confidence shattered. Strangely, much later in life, Dasharatha had to hurt another young and noble man who was equally devoted to his parents. And just that, this time it happened to be his own most beloved son, Rama. The guilt and grief were so intense that he had sent away such a noble and innocent son that he eventually died of heartache. The first time Dasharatha hurt Shravana, it was an unconscious action. The second time Dasharatha hurt Sri Rama, it was a conscious but a helpless action. When you hurt an innocent person unconsciously, or when you hurt your loved ones helplessly, it is very challenging to forgive oneself. And this sometimes happens in life. I have seen people judge themselves for the rest of their lives because of this. At other times, you hurt people with your words and your actions because you get caught in this whirlwind of inner states of anger, violence, fear, hate, and greed, and then you lose control. And in other instances, perhaps you have not hurt others, but you have disappointed yourself with the irresponsibility or say even lethargy. Whatever it is, you need to cross this inner torment and you need to move into a state of forgiveness for yourself. When you don't forgive yourself, you unconsciously inflict punishment on yourself, manifesting as a disease or manifesting as a crisis. When I talk about forgiveness, I'm often asked a question. Should we not feel remorse? Should we not feel guilty? Should we not repent for what we have done? Well, Shri Krishnaji and I have a very different view on this. We don't worship guilt. We don't provoke guilt in people, nor do we encourage people to feel guilty. What is guilt? Guilt is fundamentally beating up yourself for some wrong action you did or for some right you did not do. And in this entire process of guilt and remorse, you end up hating yourself. You end up fearing God's punishment. Fear and guilt often go together. You fear God's punishment. You fear bad karma coming to you, or you fear the loss of an image. You simply can't separate the two. Fear and guilt, we can say, are inseparable cousins. You become a more conflicted human being as a result of guilt. Now tell me, who is kinder and who's a more caring human being of the two? The one who is conflicted and fearful, or the one who is peaceful? In conflict, you become unwise. In conflict, your thoughts merely go in circles without ever taking a break. And you arrive at unwise solutions. That is why the path we lead seekers on is one of liberation from guilt. It is the awakening of the heart. A medical doctor came to Ekam to go through an inner journey. And in the process, the divine took him to an event that he knew, but he did not ever have the courage to move and see it. He was an 8-year-old boy, and he was playing the gilli danda on the street with his friends. A game, I'm sure you're aware of this game, that's played with a small and a big wooden stick. It is a very ancient game. It's even mentioned in Mahabharata. It's probably a precursor to the modern cricket. We never know. He was an expert, and his cousins and friends decided to go out and beat him at the game. And during the game, one of his cousins rushed forward to catch the gilli when it hit his eye. And in days after, he came to know that the cousin had lost his vision in one of his eyes. Over the days, his family and his relatives gave him a very disgusting look, completely ignored him. His parents, unable to face his aunt, constantly reprimanded him, advised him. His uncle, to whom usually he went to for love, looked at him very wistfully and said, "Looks like you have it in you to hurt people. Be careful." And those words from his uncle were like the final nail into the coffin. He stopped playing that day. No one cared for his guilt, for his fear, for his shame. Nor did he grieve, because he was choked by all the judgments that came at him from everyone who walked into their home. And in the process, in the deep inner journey at Ekam, for the first time, he cried like a little boy for the wound that he had inflicted on his cousin, for his own hurt, and also for his lost childhood. This painful childhood experience had become a very powerful samskara in his unconscious. Samskaras are impressions of past experiences. They are much deeper than memories. They are imprints in your unconscious mind. Hurting experiences that happen in childhood can lead to impressions that can lead to repetitive patterns throughout one's life. Even though he had not consciously tried to remember the event, the painful samskara of "I will hurt people who get close to me" became his constant judgment of himself. He felt fearful of getting close to people. He becomes distant. He becomes isolated. In fact, his choice of career was also an effort to atone for his guilt. He had suffered endlessly with his judgmental mind. Strangely, whenever he tried to care for people, it would not go well for him. Something disrupting would happen again and again, and then he would move into a shell. People would either express their disappointments or they would get hurt in his care. This pattern kept repeating again and again, reinforcing the feeling of lack of love within. During the mystic process, he was taken back to those moments in his childhood. The divine embraced the 8-year-old, healed his wounds in the heart. In the process, over the days, he saw life as a great karmic flow in which he and his cousins were all brought together in that moment. In that experience at Ekam, the burden left him. He was filled with peace and stillness, something that he had not felt earlier. In the months or after the process, his pattern in the external world begins to change. He does not lose relationships anymore. And over the years, he has evolved into a very compassionate doctor, a very intuitive doctor. I want you to understand that an authentic forgiving oneself actually breaks the flow of negative karmic energy. It allows for a new and a more harmonious flow of life to emerge. Do you understand the power of forgiving oneself? It breaks the whole karmic loop that can go on, resulting in punishing yourself. There is yet another classical example of forgiving oneself in Ramayana. This is the story of Ahalya. Ahalya, the youthful wife of sage Gautama. She falls into the trap of Indra and commits infidelity. And when her husband and her son come to know of this, they abandon her and go away. Ramayana says she became a stone, or that she became invisible. And she reacquired her human form and her family because of Sri Rama's touch. What does this actually mean? Ahalya's heart became stone-like in guilt and shame. The once radiant and respected woman withdrew from the world as a punishment for herself. She grieved the alienation of her loved ones. And this entire karmic cycle came to an end when she experienced the compassion of Sri Rama. Sri Rama helped herself transcend her self-loathing and self-judgment and brought peace to her soul. And this transformation in her consciousness also ended the negative karmic consequence in her life and made her husband and her child return back to her life with love. Forgiving oneself is a crucial milestone for every human being on earth. The many wounds in your heart must be healed. Your heart must awaken to compassion for yourself. Remember, the mistakes of your life occurred either unknowingly or when you were carried by destructive emotional states like that of Ahalya or Dasharatha. One practice that will help you on this path is to really contemplate and recognize those destructive emotional states from which you perform erroneous actions that hurt others. That self-knowing, that understanding and awareness of your state of mind will form the bedrock of your transformation. Naturally, you become more kind and you are less fault-finding. Ultimately, if you truly know to forgive yourself, you will also radiate a loving understanding to your fellow human beings.